3 spine-chilling true tales of haunted encounters. Discover the Sinister Secrets EP, 161, on a quiet night in Maplewood, every creak of the floorboard sounded like a scream. Sarah's heart pounded as she clutched the kitchen counter, staring at the glowing screen of her phone. Missing person reports danced across her neighborhood chat, chilling tales of lost souls whispering from the deep, dark corners of suburbia. 3 children gone, 1 teacher vanished. Find them before it's too late. It felt as if the air itself was heavy with dread, suffocating the laughter that used to fill her home. Tommy sat at the table, doodling absent-mindedly while Helen scrolled through her phone, her brow furrowed. The innocence of their laughter turned cold as the news seeped into their bones. Sarah thought about Mr. Hawthorne, the friendly assistant principal who always wore a smile. Could he really be part of this nightmare? With rising fear, she shook the thought away. He was just a neighbor, wasn't he? But that Wednesday evening, paranoia twisted Sarah's stomach. As she read a message in the group, a strange accusation aimed at Mr. Hawthorne, her heart began to race. He's been acting strange, and I've caught him lurking near the schoolyard at odd hours. The words felt like daggers. She dismissed the rumors as boredom-fueled paranoia. She had to. But as she looked into Tommy's wide eyes and saw the shadows lining Helen's face, she could feel the warmth of their home starting to evaporate. Compelled by a mother's instinct, Sarah swung open her front door and walked toward Mr. Hawthorne's house. The suburban quiet felt eerie, every rustle of leaves whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear. It became a surreal blur as she knocked on his door, desperation clawing at her chest. He appeared, all charm and calmness, but behind his bright smile, something felt off. She could feel the thin veil of trust slipping, days twisted into nightmares. Doors creaked open at night. Whispers swirled like a storm in the shadows. I saw a man outside last night. Tommy exclaimed, his voice trembling with genuine fear. There was a shadow, Mom. Helen chimed in, her teenage bravado cracking. Every ounce of strength left Sarah as their innocent world shattered. With a gnawing anxiety boiling in her gut, Sarah found herself at the abandoned school. The whispering walls, the tales said they held the secrets of the lost. She stepped into the decaying building, her heart racing like a drum. Every echo felt like the voices of the missing, calling out through time. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a haunting gallery of photographs. The faces of the missing stared back at her, eyes wide with the terror of the unknown. Her breath hitched as she recognized one of the names scrawled beneath a name she had seen just days before on her phone, confronting her fears in flesh and blood. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The walls throbbed as if alive, feeding off her fear. A deafening silence wrapped around her, and the vibrations of unseen whispers grew louder. He was one of them. The weight of it crashed down on her. Just as she started to turn, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Every fiber of her being screamed for her not to look, but dread urged her fingers to tap the screen. Mr. Hawthorne has gone missing too. The group's message brought the room to a standstill. The air was thick, heavy, charged with the terror bubbling within. Sarah felt the walls close in, shadows creeping up the sides of her mind. Who can you trust, when monsters could wear the faces of friendly neighbors? A chilling fear coursed through her veins. What she had taken for granted now twisted into a nightmare. Panic surged through Sarah's veins as the darkness seemed to close in on her. The photographs glared, their haunted faces permanently etched with fear. Her breath quickened, suffocating her as doubts danced madly in her mind. What if he did something to them? The thoughts clawed at her sanity as the walls whispered secrets from beyond. She stumbled back, knocking over a pile of debris that had gathered in the dirt. An eerie silence enveloped her again, but this time, its grip felt different. The air grew colder, chilling her bones. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a shadow darting past the jagged windows. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" Silence hung for a moment, thick and suffocating, before the soft scuffle of feet echoed back, a scuffle that made her heart pound. Desperation tightened around her throat. She needed to leave. Now. But just as she reached for the door, a voice soft and melodious, yet laced with malice, cut through the silence. "Stay," it whispered, each syllable curling into her ear like smoke. She froze. The chill ran down her spine as she felt the urge to obey wash over her. "Who's there?" she dared to ask, her words barely a breath. "Don't you want to know?" the voice crooned, gentle yet unyielding. "Learn what happened to them, learn what happened to him." Shivers cascaded through her. She knelt, heart racing as she spotted a torn piece of paper on the ground. It was soaked in shadows, but she could make out a few words: "Last seen, by Mr. Hawthorne." Her blood ran cold. Was he connected to all this? Or worse, was he watching her right now? Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, casting twisted shadows along the cracked walls. Every flicker heightened her senses, every shadow a reminder that she wasn't alone. She glanced towards the door, but panic rooted her feet to the ground. What lurked behind her? A sound, soft laughter echoed from the hallway, too close for comfort. It was a child's laugh, a playful, innocent sound twisted against the backdrop of dread. "Tommy?" she gasped, spinning on her heel, peering into the dark corridor where it came from. "Helen? Is that you?" No answer. But the laughter continued, a taunting echo wrapping around her. "Come play, Sarah." A flood of horror bursted in her chest. They were in danger. Her children could be close, but they could also be lost. "I'm coming," she shouted, her voice ringing through the empty halls, desperate to pierce the haunting melody. Forcing herself forward, she crept deeper into the shadows, her heart pounding with each cautious step. The air was thick with whispers, swirling all around her, a cacophony of voices surrounding her, blurring the line between reality and nightmarish hallucination. Every inch of her screamed to turn back, to flee back into the safety of the daylight. Yet, that laugh echoed again, just ahead. She couldn't go back now, not without her children. And then a movement in the darkness, her breath caught in her throat as a figure emerged, silhouetted against the dim light from behind. Her pulse quickened, terror seizing her. "No, please. It couldn't be. Mommy." The voice was a cracked version of Tommy's, laced with fear. "Help us!" Panic bubbled inside her. She had to get to them. "Where are you?" she cried, pushing forward. "Behind you." The whisper echoed eerily, resonating as though the room itself was alive. She turned slowly, dread filling her as the darkness pulled back to reveal another figure, Mr. Hawthorne, standing there, a wide, unsettling grin painted across his face. "Oh, Sarah," he said softly. "Welcome to the party." A cold sweat drenched Sarah as she realized the true horror that lay ahead. What had she unwittingly walked into? A shiver shot down Sarah's spine, as she struggled to process the grotesque smile spreading across Mr. Hawthorne's face. The shadows around him writhed and twisted, almost as if they were alive, as if they were extensions of his malicious intent. What do you want?" she stammered, forcing words from her trembling lips. The urge to flee battled with a dread curiosity that gripped her heart. "Join us," he replied, his voice dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "Just a little game, for the ones you love." The darkness deepened around her, clinging like a suffocating fog. Her instincts screamed for her to turn and run. But the thought of Tommy and Helen, lost and alone in this nightmare, kept her rooted to the spot. "Where are they?" she demanded, her voice gaining strength. "What have you done?" Mr. Hawthorne merely chuckled, a low, sinister sound that rumbled in the room like thunder. "They're closer than you think. Just wait." His grin widened, showing teeth that gleamed like a predator's. Then, without warning, the walls themselves trembled, rattling with an unseen force. Pictures hung like lost souls, their gazes shifting, watching her every move. It was as if the house anticipated her anguish. In that moment, a crash echoed from the corridor where the laughter had first sounded. "Mommy!" A clear, desperate scream came from the void. The illusion of safety shattered as Sarah rushed toward the sound, drawn like a moth to a flame. "Tommy! Helen!" She shouted, her voice ripping through the air and resonating in that heart-stopping silence. "Help us!" The urgency in their voices pulled at her soul. She fought against the chilling dread that threatened to anchor her in place. Breathless, she dashed down the hallway. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight, almost as if they were warning her to stop. Shadows swirled, slipping past her, whispering secrets meant to ensnare her in a web of despair. Suddenly, she spotted something on the floor, an old, dust-covered toy. One of Tommy's. The colors had faded, the joy it once held erased by time and sorrow. This couldn't be the last memory she held of her children. "No!" she cried, snatching it up. The moment she did, the shadows momentarily retreated, pulling away like a skittish animal. "Mommy, help!" The voices grew more frantic, blending into one frightened chorus. "Stay close!" she called, though she had no idea who or what she was talking to. She stumbled further into the dark maw of the house, heart racing, searching for her children. The air grew thicker, suffocating her breath, making each movement feel heavy and slow. Just then, she caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of her eye, a figure, small and fragile, darting out of view. "Tommy?" she whispered, desperation crashing over her like a tide. A guttural laugh echoed from the shadows behind her, a twisted melody that danced through the hall. "They're here, Sarah, they're always here." That same haunting voice echoed around her, but it felt wrong, warped and monstrous. Sarah's heart raced as she swiveled around, every instinct telling her to run, but she pushed forward, driven by a mother's love. "Where are you? Where's my son?" Suddenly, a door burst open at the end of the hallway, casting an eerie light that flickered like a dying flame. It beckoned her. "Help us!" The voices cried again, and she recognized their panic. They were in there. Sarah sprinted toward the door, hope blooming, but as she reached for the handle, a scream ripped through the hallway. A howl of anguish that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Her hand froze just above the doorknob. Something was terribly wrong. "Get away!" Hawthorne's voice surged behind her, a serpent's hiss. "You don't belong here." Panic surged again as the very darkness began to swirl, pulling her away from the door. Her pulse roared in her ears, drowning out all sound as the shadows came alive, suffocating her hope. In a flash, she whipped around to find Hawthorne closing in, his gleeful grin turning into something much more sinister. "Why don't we show you what really lies beyond that door?" The shadows quaked with anticipation. She could run, or face the darkness head-on. But how? What were the depths of Mr. Hawthorne's games? A decision loomed as the shadows danced with fury, and all she could do was fight against their grip. The shadows pulled back just enough for Sarah to glimpse an unfathomable darkness pooling behind Hawthorne. It flickered, revealing tantalizing silhouettes as though spirits trapped within nightmarish confines. She braced herself against the chilling air, heart pounding like a war drum. "Let them go!" she shouted, though her voice quaked. Fear clawed at her throat, but the thought of Tommy and Helen propelled her forward. "They've done nothing to you." Hawthorne's smile widened, stretching his mouth impossibly wide. "Oh, Sarah, you should learn by now that nothing is as it seems, especially here." His voice slithered around her, tightening like a noose. "Just let me see them," she cried, desperation spilling over. Each second felt like an eternity, every heartbeat echoing in the suffocating stillness. She figured the light would make everything okay, but now, it felt like a taunt, flickering with cruel delight that in a sudden, sickening moment, the shadows shifted. A low, keening wail pulsed through the air, weaving its way into her bones. The sound was so familiar, a mixture of fear and begging. Her heart sank. "Tommy? Helen?" she whispered, her voice cracking. The shadows thickened, forming vague shapes around her. "There's a price to pay," Hawthorne crooned, eyes glinting with dark glee. The shadows twisted into figures resembling her children, laughter erupting like nails on a chalkboard. "To save them, you must accept the game. All you need is a little trust." A frantic thought flashed through her mind. Trust him? In this house of horrors? What game? She asked, temporarily caught off guard by the clarity of his gaze. "Simple," he said, and the air around them seemed to breathe. "Find the truth. Only then will they be free." "Truth?" Her voice faltered. "What truth? What do I need to find?" Hawthorne's laugh was disembodied and cruel. As the air crackled with malice, he stretched out an arm, beckoning to the door. "Do you really want to know what lies beyond? The truth is waiting." With one last glance at the door, Sarah felt an almost irresistible pull to it, to step through and confront whatever awaited her. But doubt surged. Could I face it? She asked herself. She was so close, yet terror gnawed at her like a hungry beast. "Time is short," Hawthorne hissed, his eyes narrowing as he leaned closer. "Choose, Sarah. Will you join the game or let them linger in this nightmare forever?" A sudden rush of courage surged through her. "I will find them," she shouted defiantly. "And you won't get away with this." Hawthorne's laughter echoed again, deep and ominous, wrapping around her like creeping vines. "The house will show you, dear Sarah, it always shows." The shadows lunged towards her, reaching out like skeletal hands, brushing against her skin with the chilling touch of the dead. She gasped, adrenaline surging, her instincts screaming. "Tommy! Helen!" she shouted, voice raw with emotion, praying that they heard her. The shadows danced around her, almost mocking her determination. She had to believe they were there, but just as she felt the urge to charge forward, the ground beneath her feet shifted. A deafening crash resonated as nearby walls seemed to close in. Panic flooded her senses. She didn't know how much longer she could withstand this torment. In that chaotic moment, an unexpected clarity struck. Beneath her feet was the key. An old wooden floorboard seemed slightly ajar, an unnatural groove marked by years of neglect and sorrow. Before she could question it, she knelt down, heart racing, fingers darting to pry it open. The darkness filled with whispers, warning her imploringly, but there was no turning back. As she lifted the board, a cold draft swept through, extinguishing the faint light. A stench of decay erupted, forcing her to gasp, but she had to know. What lay beneath would change everything. "Mommy." The voices echoed again, desperation clawing at her heart, and from the depths, something reached up, calling. Would she dare to grasp it? But the shadows lunged one last time, pulling her closer into their abyss, wondering if she would truly embrace what lay ahead. The moment Sarah pried the board open, a rush of cold air blasted toward her, twisting the shadows into fleeting shapes. In that dark void beneath the floor, the air was heavy, thick with secrets older than the house itself. She felt herself sway, caught between exhilaration and dread, her heart hammering in her chest like a wild animal. "Mommy." The voice was clearer now, echoing from the shadows below. It was her son's voice, a potent mixture of fear and longing that tore through her resolve. She couldn't hesitate. Not when he needed her. Barely catching her breath, she leaned down, hand plunging into the darkness as she felt around, fingers grazing a cold, slick surface. Panic surged as she imagined what could lie ahead. Rats, or worse. But the primal instinct to save her kids flowed stronger, tightening her grip on whatever it was. Suddenly, a jagged edge carved into her palm, drawing blood. She flinched, but it only fueled her resolve. "I'm coming for you," she shouted, the walls shuddering at her voice, reverberating like a thunderclap through the suffocating darkness. With a fierce tug, she pulled out a small, weathered box, its surface coated in grime and age, with thin, intricate engravings that twisted and coiled like snakes. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her, growing agitated and restless, echoing warnings intertwined with promises. "Open it!" a voice hissed, barely above a whisper, almost hypnotic. Sarah hesitated, sweat trickling down her back. Would this reveal the truth Hawthorne spoke of? The ache to know gnawed at her, but a sliver of doubt crept in. But then, amidst the cacophony, she heard Tommy's voice again, calling out, "Mommy, please." It fractured her moment of hesitation, snapping her back to the reality that the shadows were converging around her, pressing closer like a vice. With shaking hands, she fumbled with the latch and popped it open. The lid creaked, revealing the contents, a pile of brittle papers, yellowed and frayed at the edges, alongside a small porcelain figurine of a child. The very likeness of Tommy. "What the hell?" she gasped, fingers shaking as they brushed against the figure. At that instant, the room plunged into chaos. Everything around her trembled violently, and the shadows hissed like 1,000 serpents in fury. The temperature dropped, and Sarah felt the weight of darkness pressing down on her with a crushing strength. "Fool!" Hawthorne's voice boomed, amplified through the walls. "You've crossed a line you can never uncross." The air around her thrummed, vibrating with power as the whispers escalated into a deafening roar. She clutched the box to her chest, heart racing, thoughts racing. There had to be a connection, a way back to her children. The shadows reeled back, momentarily stunned, and in that split second, Sarah dove back into the darkness, searching for the edge of the truth. She started to read the papers, eyes scanning over names she didn't recognize, dates that sent chills racing down her spine. Each line felt like a gate opening to a twisted story, a history laced with desperation and heartache. Suddenly, a chilling realization hit her: this was not just about her children. The shadows were more than mere specters, they were echoes of lost lives, tragedy entwined deeply within the walls. As she continued reading, a name leaped out at her. Hawthorne. Before she could process what this meant, the portents darkened. A shriek pierced her thoughts, a scream so raw it felt alive. The shadows swirled violently, their forms contorting as if in agony. "He belongs to us." They cried out in unison, and the ground shook violently beneath her. With her blood pounding in her ears, Sarah understood, she had unleashed something. Something once contained, now desperate to reclaim what it had lost. "Mommy." The echoes of her children faded, lost among the chaos, and for a moment, everything stopped as shadows focused on her, a mass of resentment and sorrow poised to strike that deadly hush. Sarah realized she had a choice to make. Truth or surrender to fight for her children, or become another lost soul. The shadows shifted, dancing hungrily, waiting eagerly for her answer. With a primal scream, Sarah launched herself away from the darkness, heart racing, desperate to escape the suffocating embrace of the shadows. The box slipped from her grasp, clattering across the floor and spilling its secrets into the gloom. Papers glided like lost souls, spreading out as scattered breadcrumbs behind her. "Mommy!" The cry pierced through the air, echoing, desperate, teasing her to return. The voice was a thread weaving tighter around her heart. But the shadows surged, coiling like angry serpents, fueled by her hesitation. Against her better instincts, Sarah turned to look back. The jagged edges of darkness morphed into forms she couldn't fully see, hunched shapes that wriggled and swayed as if possessed by a hunger that called to her. It was silent now, save for her ragged breaths and the shuffling papers. Then came the sound, a soft, mournful wail that clawed at her mind. "You took him from us." It was a whisper but felt like a shout against the storm of shadows swirling in the corners of the room. "Get out!" she screamed, her voice cracking. The shadows paused, intrigued, but they did not retreat. The urge to flee clashed violently with the yearning to find her son. She stepped further into the darkness, against every instinct screaming at her to escape. "Tommy, where are you?" Her voice trembled, swallowed by the dark. Each step reverberated off unseen walls, and shadows crept closer, trailing her like a predator. In the abyss, a flicker of light caught her eye. It was dim, almost imperceptible, but it flickered like a beacon in the night. Sarah rushed toward it, haste driving her deeper into the void. As she approached, the glow intensified, revealing a narrow passage shrouded in cobwebs. There was no choice. She slipped inside, feeling the cold tendrils of fear gripping her throat. She clutched the porcelain figure, horrified yet fascinated. It felt alive, warm against her palm. The passage was narrow, and she had to crouch. Voices whispered secrets in languages foreign yet familiar. Names drifted through the air: Hawthorne, Mary, Charles, like fog, weaving tales of sorrow and betrayal. "Mommy." Tommy's voice surged, pleading. Hope flared momentarily. "I can't find you. Help me." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. She had to act. She turned left with no plan, just instinct. The warmth of the porcelain figure grew hotter, pulsing with energy that made her heart sink to an erratic beat. With each step, the passage narrowed, pressing against her, squeezing the air from her lungs. But the light grew even stronger, illuminating drawings on the walls, images of children caught in the grip of shadows, their eyes wide with fear, mouths twisted in silent screams. Panic clawed at her insides. Were those her children? Lost souls trapped between the worlds. A sudden chill swept through the corridor, the light flickering as if responding to her distress. "You're losing him." "No!" Sarah shouted, pushing forward. Her heart raced, driven by an unrelenting urgency. With each turn, the shadows clawed closer, their whispers morphing into roars, demanding her attention, filling her with doubt. And then she stumbled upon a clearing, an opening, unstarred by the darkness. Standing in front of her, a childlike figure loomed, small with features hidden beneath heavy shadows. "Mommy!" It was a fragile sound, a trembling whisper that shattered her heart into a million hopeless pieces. "Tommy?" she whispered, both terrified and exhilarated. The shadows screamed as if in torment. "Leave now. It wants him." They surged closer, stretching their fingers as if to pull her back. But determination surged through her. She couldn't lose him. Not again. "Hold on, baby!" Sarah yelled, lunging forward. In that fleeting moment, the shadows pulsated, detached, swirling around her, drowning her in darkness as she reached for the child. "Let him go." Suddenly, a flash and overwhelming light consumed everything. And then, silence. There was a stillness that felt like an eternity. A question simmered in the air, crackling with tension. Had she reached her son, or was this an illusion, another trick of the shadows? "Sarah," the voice came again, but it wasn't Tommy's. It was deeper, richer, resonating through the cavern of her mind, and in that moment, she knew she was not alone. There were secrets waiting to be uncovered, dark truths just beyond her reach. What lay ahead remained unknown, but one thing was clear: she was now entangled in a web far deeper than anyone could possibly imagine. Sarah gasped, her lungs cold and empty as the silence burrowed into her bones. Looking around, she was enveloped in an icy void, the dim light now reduced to a flicker on the brink of extinguishing. The shadows shifted, reforming into menacing shapes that stirred just beyond the reach of her vision. "Sarah," the voice was distorted, wrapping around her like smoke. It swirled with a familiarity that sent tremors through her body. It was a voice from her past, one she thought was gone forever. "Help me, you have to help me, Tommy!" she cried, desperation coiling tightly within her chest. "Where are you?" Panic surged, making her heart race, each beat reverberating with the weight of her fear. She took a step forward, careful not to lose the last remnants of the flickering light. The passageway began to contort, the walls pressing in, as if testing her resolve. Glancing down, she noticed the porcelain figure had grown cold, its warmth fleecing away into the darkness. It was as if the very act of holding it was drawing her deeper into the shadows, pulling her away from her son. "Mommy, help!" the voice cracked, echoing more mournful than before, laden with unbearable sorrow. There was an urgency she couldn't ignore, a command woven with heartache. But the shadows were closing in, their chilling whispers promising despair. "Leave now, Sarah. Forget him." The consequences of turning back echoed in her mind like 1,000 whispers. Would she abandon her son to the darkness? The thought twisted her stomach. "Tommy!" She shouted again, the name a prayer and a plea, an anchor in the storm of her terror. "I'm coming." With renewed determination, she pressed forward, pushing aside the murmurs. The light flickered just beyond a shroud of darkness, urging her on. Stay with me," she whispered, desperate to tether her thoughts to hope, but a sudden gust of chill swept through the corridor, snuffing the flickering light almost entirely. "You will not take him!" she shouted defiantly, tears streaming down her cheeks. In that heartbeat, reality twisted. The shadows surged forward, leaping from the walls, encircling her. Cold fingers gripped her wrists, shackling her in place. She felt her strength waning as their whispers filled the air, hissing words that dripped with malice. "He is ours now." A vision of dark eyes, so vivid yet lifeless, flashed in her mind, the faces of children long lost, trapped forever in their torment. Her heart pounded erratically, terror washing over her like ice water. They had failed to escape and now they wanted her to join their fate. Suddenly, a guttural roar erupted from the shadows, an explosion of rage aimed directly at her. "You'll never get him, Sarah." With every ounce of willpower, Sarah tore free, stumbling backward. She could see now, barely, the outline of a small figure in the rear of the tunnel. Tommy. In this instant of clarity, there remained a sliver of light that seemed to grow stronger, shining through the suffocating dark. With her vision sharpened, she rushed forward, arms outstretched, but an unseen force hurled her to the ground, scrambling her legs beneath her. "Mommy!" The cry rang out again, but this time it was distant, fading, snatched away by the creeping shadows, sinking into the blackness. "No!" she yelled, voice breaking as raw desperation filled her veins. Desperation turned into something far more primal. She pushed herself off the ground, forcing air into her lungs. "I won't give up on you." The shadows hissed as she advanced again, raw fury fueling her determination. Every step felt like walking through a nightmare, the air thickening, pulling her back as if the darkness were alive. Just as she neared the figure, the shadows recoiled, screeching like a broken record. The air electrified with an intense energy that painted everything around her in warped shadows. With one last effort, Sarah lunged forward, she grasped for the child, her fingers brushing against nothingness. And then the world shifted again, crashing into a blinding light. Everything faded. When it finally dimmed, she was left standing alone in a gray void, torn between the knowing and the unknowable, between reality and a dream jangled by horror. A whisper flitted through the empty air, swirling around her face, "You shouldn't be here, Sarah, you were never meant to return." And as echoes of sorrows began to rise, one horrific truth crashed into her: she was only beginning to fathom what lay hidden in the depths of the darkness. With dread threading through her veins, she realized, each step closer to the truth could plunge her deeper into a mystery from which there may be no escape. The void swallowed her whole, each second stretching into eternity. Sarah stood alone, the gray fog swirling around her like a restless sea, each breath trembling on the edge of panic. The whisper, a cruel and familiar melody, echoed in her mind. "You shouldn't be here, Tommy." She shouted again, her voice breaking against the silence like fragile glass. There was no response, just the oppressive weight of the shadows surrounding her. An unsettling chill crept down her spine, and she shivered uncontrollably, clenching the cold porcelain figure against her chest. I have to find you. But as she spoke, the air thickened, curling at the edges of her vision. Shapes flickered at the periphery, half-formed, like memories long buried surfacing to haunt her. She staggered, feeling the shadows reach for her, trailing like hungry wraiths eager for warmth. "What do you want from me?" she cried, anguish erupting from the depths of her being. "Your sacrifice," a chorus of voices whispered back, an eerie harmony. Familiar yet foreign, it struck a chord within her, pulling at the threads of her sanity. Each word blended with the cold that pressed in around her. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the haunting echoes. She took a deep breath and forced herself to face the encroaching darkness. "I want to be sacrificed. I want to leave my son." Suddenly, a flicker of light illuminated a path before her, a crooked, trembling line drawing her deeper into the fog. Tentatively, she stepped forward, the pull of the light a faint promise of hope in the oppressive gloom. "Mommy? Is that you?" The voice snaked through the air, fragile and distant. Sarah's heart raced. "Tommy," she yelled, desperation clawing at her throat. She dashed toward the light, blinded and breathless, each footfall reverberating against the silence. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, flickering warmly. But with each step, the shadows rippled, tightening around her like a noose. As she reached the edge of the light, it pulsated again, growing brighter but casting sinister shapes in stark relief. "Mommy!" The cry was closer now, tinged with fear, pulling at the strings of her heart. But the shadows wailed in response, their cries filling her mind. "Not him, Sarah, not him." Fighting the surge of panic, she pressed forward, her feet barely grazing the cold ground beneath. As she neared the source of the voice, a figure began to materialize in the luminous glow, smaller, slighter, an image of innocence trapped within a thick veil of shadows. Tommy. It was him, she was sure of it, and with renewed hope, she surged towards him, arms outstretched, but just as her fingers were poised to grasp his, the shadows coiled around her leg, icy tendrils clawing at her skin, slamming her to the ground. Panic surged, and she felt the porcelain figure slip from her grip, hitting the ground with a sound that echoed like a death knell. "No!" she screamed, her voice raw and broken. "Let him go. You can't have him." The shadows pushed closer, suffocatingly tight, their whispers morphing into a cacophony of voices, each one a sonorous threat. "Join us, Sarah. Your place is here where the lost find their home." Frantically, Sarah clawed at the ground, eyes darting around, searching for Tommy amidst the chaos pooling like darkness at her feet. "You're lying. I will not give in." With a surge of defiance, Sarah summoned her strength. She pushed herself up from the ground, her vision piercing through the veil of shadows that crept at the periphery. "I'm coming for you, Tommy." But as she charged forward, the ground beneath her crumbled, pulling her down. She teetered on the edge of a great abyss, the light retreating as darkness surged. "Come to us, Sarah," the shadows enticed, their voices slithering into her mind. "You never left, you're one of us now." And as the bottomless void yawned beneath her, all sense of direction lost, a horrific realization crashed over her. She was not hunting for her son, she was stumbling toward a fate she barely understood. Pulled in, spun around, she felt herself slipping. Then she heard it, a soft voice, barely above a whisper. "Help me!" Before she could scream, everything vanished, plunging her into an all-consuming blackness. What lay on the other side? What awaited in the inky abyss? The darkness enveloped her entirely, cold and suffocating. It was not just the absence of light, it was a pressing weight that seemed to crush her lungs, stealing her breath away. Sarah's heart raced in her chest, the rhythmic pounding echoing in her ears as she struggled to make sense of the void around her. "Tommy!" She gasped into the silence, the name slipping from her lips like a desperate prayer. She felt her pulse thundering wildly, and as her hands flailed about, she squeezed her eyes shut and willed the shadows to retreat. It didn't work. They lingered, thickening around her. A memory flickered in the bleakness, sharp and biting. The porcelain figure, it was his. The fragment of the past was like a thread woven through her consciousness, a reminder that she had to keep moving, had to find Tommy, whatever that meant now. Out of the blackness, a flicker of sound emerged, distant yet familiar. "Mommy?" It was barely a whisper, a call like a candle flickering in a storm. Her heart seized. Tommy. With renewed purpose, she moved forward, but the ground felt uneven beneath her, shifting like sand. She lost her balance and stumbled, arms flailing as the darkness beckoned her down, threatening to swallow her whole. A cold, slimy texture wrapped around her ankle, pulling her closer to the unseen depths. "Help me stop!" she shouted, panic slicing through her voice. "I'm coming. I'm coming." The shadows wove together, a tangible force, their malignant grip tightening. Gritting her teeth, Sarah fought against the unseen hands, dragging her back. "You can't take me!" she screamed, fury igniting within her. She clawed at the emptiness, pushed against the biting chill, and finally broke free from the shadow's hold. She landed hard on the ground, gasping. The thick fog lightened momentarily as she pushed herself up, every ounce of strength focused on finding the light. "Tommy!" she called, her voice echoing into the void like a lost soul. The darkness swirled around her again, pressing in, but the call came again, unmistakable. "Mommy, please!" Each plea seared into her heart like a branding iron, intensifying her dread. The desperation in his voice felt urgent, frantic. She had to reach him, but where was he? Moving forward, she stumbled, catching herself just in time. The fog remained relentless, morphing into grotesque shapes, whispering in a language she could barely comprehend but understood all too well. "Come with us, join the lost, find peace, no!" she yelled defiantly, shaking her head as if that would make the haunting voices disappear. "I want to leave him." In that moment of clarity, she caught a glimmer of faint light radiating through the chaos, pulsing and beckoning. Tentatively, she took a step closer, her limbs trembling with both dread and hope. It flickered like a heartbeat, guiding her deeper into the maze of shadows. But as she approached, the air shifted. The shadows lay heavy, slick with malevolence, like the breath of something lurking just beyond sight. "Sarah," they called, eerily melodic, drawing from her own darkest fears. "Let go!" It was suffocating, the siren of the void singing her as if it knew every secret buried within her soul. "You can't have me!" But just beyond that light, she caught a fleeting glimpse of face, a familiar face. The porcelain figure lay in the shadows just beyond her reach. It was Tommy S. Desperation surged, mingling with the growing terror. If she could reach it, "Mommy! Help me!" Crashing against the last barrier of shadows, Sarah flung herself forward, her cries echoing in a mix of fear and hope. She felt her skin burn as the darkness coiled around her again, suffocating, drowning. "No!" she shrieked, and then, as if the void could sense her weakening resolve, it released a sonorous roar that filled her ears and shook the ground. "Join us!" it sang, and there she was, hanging in the balance between light and dark, hope and despair. Suddenly, the light flickered, dimming like a dying star, and for a heartbeat, Sarah felt something wrap around her heart, a chilling promise. What would she sacrifice to save her son? With one desperate push against the encroaching void, she lunged. But the shadow seemed ready for her. What would she face on the other side? What secrets awaited her in the heart of darkness? The darkness swirled violently, wrapping around Sarah like a suffocating shroud. She felt her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. Instinct kicked in, survival. "Tommy!" she cried out, her voice amplified in the void, echoing back with a taunting undertone. "I'm coming!" The flickering light she had seen pulsed once more, a soft beacon in this oppressive darkness. "It's all or nothing now." With every ounce of courage she had left, Sarah pushed forward, desperately clawing through the shadows as if they were tangible. The shadowy tendrils hissed and writhed, reaching for her, but each step felt stronger, fueled by the memory of her children's laughter. "Mommy!" The wail cut through the chaos, sharper now, tinged with fear and desperation. It was Tommy's voice, and it sliced into her soul. She could not let it drown in the abyss. "Hold on, sweetie. I'm almost there." With that thought, she surged forward, drawing from the reserve of love buried deep in her heart. As she drew closer to the faint light, she could feel something shifting, an urgency building not just within her, but surrounding her. The shadows roared, their voices rising to a deafening crescendo, chanting and taunting. "Join us, Sarah. You're one of us now." The sinister whisper pulled at her resolve, but she pushed through, every fiber of her being igniting with determination. The light grew brighter, an ethereal glow piercing the darkness. "Tommy!" She screamed again, her voice becoming a rallying cry. She could see a figure now, small and fragile, barely visible but unmistakably hers. Every shadow, every chilling whisper fell silent as she hurtled toward the image of her son. "I'm coming for you!" Sarah shouted, voiding every ounce of hesitation left in her heart. The shadows crept toward her, a dark wave of impending despair, but she didn't care. Her son was in front of her, and that light pulsed with the warmth of hope. Then, the darkness surged, claws of shadow snagging at her heels. "You can't escape!" It roared, the walls quaking around her. But she had to act. Fueled by the essence of motherhood, she lunged, reaching for the figure. "Grab my hand." Tommy's small shape flickered in the void. She could see him more clearly now, the terror in his big eyes, pleading for her. "Mommy!" Just as she was about to grasp him, the shadows shrieked. "No!" They hissed, reclaiming their hold on her as they twisted and twisted around her limbs, paralyzing her in a cacophony of darkness. Panic threatened to choke her. "Enough!" Sarah roared. With a surge of raw strength, she tore away, her mind racing with thoughts of love and the prices she would pay. In that split second, she made a choice. The porcelain figure in her pocket, the very representation of her past, felt hot against her skin. She grasped that formless heat, nurturing it like a tender promise. "You have to let go," she shouted to the shadows. "I won't abandon him." And in that moment, she felt more than mere defiance. It was a wave of acceptance, freedom born from love. "Tommy!" The word resonated as if it could shatter the darkness. Then, the light exploded into brilliance, banishing shadows with a blinding radiance as she lunged forward, arms outstretched. "Mommy!" Tommy's voice rang clearer now, piercing through the fog. She felt the pull of that energy push against her, forcing the shadows to retreat. Just as her fingertips brushed against his small hand, the energy surged through them like a shockwave, illuminating the dark void completely. A blinding flash engulfed them. For a heartbeat, everything ceased. The shadows screeched, retreating into nothingness. Then silence. Sarah blinked rapidly, her heart pummeling in her chest as the scene unfolded. She and Tommy stood together in a vibrant landscape awash in dawn's golden light. The poltergeist of darkness had receded. "Mommy!" Tommy cried, throwing himself into her arms. She engulfed him, squeezing tight, the warmth of his body against hers washing away the lingering horror. Tears streamed down her face, releasing the tension that had been knotted deep within. "Thank God. You're safe," she sobbed, relief flooding her system, grounding her once more in reality. As the haze of despair lifted, Sarah began to understand. No matter how insurmountable the darkness appeared, love had carved a pathway through. Tommy looked up at her, his little face filled with innocence. "Where's Helen?" he whispered nervously, and suddenly, the haunting memories came flooding in. The shadows had taunted her with the price of truth. The fear wrapped around her heart once again. "We'll find her, buddy," she promised, the words heavy yet filled with newfound resolve. "Together." In that moment, Sarah instinctively understood, they would fight, not just for themselves but for all those lost in the girth of darkness, for the voiceless spirits who had cried for salvation. "Let us go, Tommy," she said, determination igniting her spirit. Hand in hand, they took the first steps, ready to uncover what lay ahead. Darkness may loom, but together, they would carve their light. "You can face anything," she thought, wrapping her fingers tighter around Tommy's little hand. They were unstoppable now, but for all those watching, the journey had only just begun. Now is your chance. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next gripping story that awaits. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Your thumbs up makes a huge difference. And we want to hear from you. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions. What do you think the family will face next? Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and join this amazing thrill ride. Let us spread the word and keep the adventure going.